Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Hope you've had a good Wednesday. Today, I was not expecting it, but we continued testimony in the Taylor Schabusiness trial. Then we went to closings, and now we're on verdict watch. I think we could have a verdict by the time I'm done recording this. After that, we will go into the insanity phase of the trial with the same jury, where her defense will argue that she was not all there when she committed these murders. Not sure how far that's going to fly, but we're going to jump in a second. Music fact of the day. Super sad to hear that Sinead O'Connor passed away. You know, she's had a tough life. She's had some struggles. She lost a son a couple of years ago to self-harm, and even before that, she struggled really, really hard with mental illness, and I hope she is at peace. I did not know this, but she has songs on soundtracks to the movies The Talented Mr. Ripley, Rugrats in Paris, and You've Got Mail. My favorite will always be Nothing Compares to You. That is a vocal masterpiece and just hauntingly beautiful. So Godspeed to Sinead O'Connor. Day 3, the witness was Miss Libero. She was back on the stand about the cell phone. That's where we ended the day yesterday. On March 2nd of 2022, she examined Taylor's phone and noticed 24 searches for Jeffrey Dahmer's butt, Jeffrey Dahmer walking into court all sexy, and Jeff Boyardee. She looked at screenshots on the phone, and there were photos of Jeffrey Dahmer around 10 to 12, maybe more. The dates of those screenshots were February 12th of 2022, so just 10 days or so before the murders. In one photo, she had a cell phone next to her head with a photo of Dahmer, and she's smiling in the photo. I have that up on the screen on YouTube. You can see it there. On cross, you talked to Taylor. She said no. Working as a police officer, you'd see all kinds of images on people's phones. People look at odd things for shock value or just out of curiosity. She's like, I don't know if I can answer that. This photo is a close-up of Taylor with a photo beside her. You don't see any weapons in the photo. And the lady says, well, we see Jeffrey Dahmer. Can you say this photo was taken on February 12th of 2022? Yes. Did you see the photos of Dahmer on the other exhibits? Do you know when they were downloaded? And she said no. The next witness is Michael, which is Shad's father. He was a statutory crime victim, not shown on camera. We could hear his voice. Shad was 25 when he was murdered. So February 21st of 2022, Shad was at his house. He was later picked up by someone and came back to his dad's house that evening with Taylor at around 9 p.m. AJ, who testified yesterday, was with them when he came back to his dad's house. They stayed about 15 minutes before leaving. Shad and Taylor came back again for a while and then said they were going to Tara's, which is Shad's mom's. She's been to Michael's home several times. His understanding was that Taylor and Shad were friends from high school. He made small talk with Taylor that evening. They were on some mission looking for something. He did not know what. He said he was kind of preoccupied and wasn't sure what they were talking about. Her demeanor was fine. There was nothing out of the ordinary. He said she was polite and respectful. And when they left, he never saw his son alive again. On cross, just essentially kind of establishing who's who, but Shad stayed primarily with his dad. The next witness, Detective Kenneth Kemp, Green Bay Police Department. He noticed a cut on her thumb and hands. They show photos. They're a little bit graphic, so trigger warning if you're on YouTube. And she requested medical care. At first, when asked, she did decline. And this witness went with her to the hospital. So on cross, he goes back through the time he responded and to where, etc. They asked about her interview. He asked if she had a hard time seeing, if she had any slurred speech, and he said no. Was she making sense? Was she calm? He said yes. At some point, you took a break in the interview, and he said we took several breaks, and one of those times was taking her to get medical treatment. About 3 hours after the interview started, she asked to be taken. The next witness, Detective Graff, he got to the police department and got a briefing and learned Shad's family was there. He interviewed Tara, which is Shad's mom. After that interview, he was told Taylor was there, and he was asked to interview her. This was on the 23rd of February of last year. He took swabs of her hands and also a buccal swab. As he's interviewing her, he's keeping in touch with investigators who were on the scene and kind of relaying things that she was telling him. He met her for a second interview on February 28th at the Green Bay Police Department. He also assisted with the investigation. He reviewed the evidence from the case. He chose several items he wanted to send for further analysis, such as a knife that she admitted to using in dismembering Shad's body. They move on to the cell phone data extraction, and they show what Wi-Fi networks she was connected to, and it gives dates and times. February 22nd at 12 a.m. to 4 a.m., she was using Wi-Fi from the apartment. 12:56 a.m., several photos were taken of Shad on Taylor's phone. I have one of those on the screen now. Between 6 and 10 a.m., she connected to Wi-Fi at Shad's mother's house. February 22nd, 12:56 a.m. and 3 a.m., there were photos of Shad on the phone. He was alive when these were taken. The background was the basement bedroom at Shad's mom's house, and the Wi-Fi also showed she was connected to that Wi-Fi when these photos were taken. He said the information about what happened to Shad and where his body parts were located all came from Taylor. In the interview, he told her he knew at this point, which is Shad's head had been found in a bucket, and he knew she had been with him. He needed to know what happened. Taylor said Shad produced a chain and put it around his neck. Seemed to be consensual at first, but then we know she strangled him until he died. She talked about his head turning purple, blood coming from the mouth, tongue protruding, and asked why she didn't stop. She said she wanted to see what happened. She said Shad did struggle, and Taylor said he was face down while she was on top of his back, so she was sort of able to control his body while she was strangling him. When asked how she felt about what she had done, she said she liked it. Initially, she said she didn't mean to, but she found it enjoyable once she started, so she kept going. She said 2 days prior to the interview, she and Shad had been smoking meth. She also told the investigator there should be a pipe and meth in the basement on the dresser or the entertainment center. She told him where the chains were in the basement and where body parts were. She told them specifics about how she dismembered him. She said she used knives from the kitchen and told him exactly where they were in the basement. She told them she had sexual contact with the body, including cuddling with the body after he was dead. He knew there wasn't a lot of blood consistent with dismemberment, and so she used either the bucket or the blue tote to capture that and disposed of it in the shower drain. She said there would be a portion of his lower limbs in her van and described how she took those parts out of the house. She said she left the residence because she heard a lot of walking around upstairs, and she said she heard gunshots in the area. She said she wanted to take the head in the bucket and the other stuff in there, but she said she just forgot it. The timeline leading up was 2 days before, on the 21st. She was at the apartment with AJ. We know he testified that they picked up Shad. They got back to the apartment, and at one point they visited Shad's father and returned back to the apartment. AJ left, so Shad and Taylor went to his mother's house. While at the apartment, they used meth, and Shad and AJ smoked marijuana. She said she thought Tara came down in the basement with a cat. She didn't interact with her. She didn't think Tara saw her, and she said she kept quiet while Tara was down there. The second interview, February 28th, her demeanor was calm, and she was able to answer questions. It was interesting to watch these video interviews. She seemed very normal speaking, but at the same time, what she's speaking about is so abnormal. It's just really bizarre to watch. It's insane, y'all. She realized she needed to remove the body from the house to avoid getting caught, but she knew she couldn't move him herself. She said that was what led to her decision to dismember him. She admits to using cleaning products to clean up the scene. Then we get into the actual interrogation video. It starts off with her saying that she hates her outfit. It's kind of a one-piece yellow jail suit. She said Shad is her ex-boyfriend, and the investigator mentions a lot of blood in the basement and his head in a bucket. They say they know she was there with him and left, and she says the van is a neighbor's van. They tell her they found Shad's head and ask where the rest of the body is, and she says it's in the house. When asked what happened, she said she blacked out at one point. She said, there's this chain, and I was playing around with it. She said, I'm terrible at explaining things, and then she kind of laughs. She then says that Shad was the one who put the chain around his neck, and they were playing around with it. She said they had smoked ice and said the pipe is on the table, and she also left a baggie there that had some drugs in it. She said those are in the basement as well as the chain. She said she's having flashbacks about what happened and she said it was weird. Then she said, I think y'all, I was riding him like a donkey. She was pulling the chain. She said they weren't having sex, but they were getting there. She says she doesn't know why she didn't stop. She had never done anything like that. She said she and Shad liked to do the ligature stuff. And the last time they were intimate was in August. So apparently they weren't from August to February. She said she doesn't like using ligatures, but Shad did. They dated for 2 years during high school and she graduated in 2016. She said Shad was her buddy and that they'd always been friends. It's not how you treat a buddy, Taylor. Taylor said she showed up at his place. They went and got meth and then they went to the apartment. They smoked, went back to his mom's. She said she was looking for crack, so that might be what Shad's father was referring to. Then she says, I can't believe I left the head. She's asked, where is the rest of his body? And she said, it's there. And then when asked what she thought about what she did, she said she liked it. She admits to dismembering him and she says the body parts are in the basement. She said she wanted the head, but she got lazy. She meant to take it with her. She said his legs are in the van, and she said she put the head in the bucket with the blanket on top, and that was the first part of the dismemberment was his head. She said she dismembered him with knives, and she said she used about 4, and she got those from the kitchen. She then told investigators where the knives were located down in the basement, which was with the body parts in the bags and in the bucket. She said she didn't want him dead. It caught her off guard. She said that when he died, he had his shorts on. And when asked if he ever tried to strangle her, she said he never got the chance to. She realized Shad was dead when his face turned purple. He was coughing up blood. And after she realized he was dead, she said she played with him for a little bit. She said, I didn't want him to die. He's my buddy, but it happened. She said it happened really fast. Afterwards, she said she cleaned him up a little bit and explained how she played with his body. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go there. And then after she cuddled his body, she said he did try to remove that chain. She's asked how she got cut, and she said during dismemberment. She says she barely does drugs. She can go months and not do them, and then all of a sudden she'll just do them again. She said she cleaned his head in the shower. She says she's not taking any prescription medications. She said back at the apartment, she gave Shad a haircut and then AJ left. She talks about crushing up trazodone and then shooting up that into her veins. Shad also did as well, according to Taylor. Then they went to his mom's house. They chilled on the bed, and after just a few minutes, that's when all this started. She said she was up playing with him all night after she killed him. She said he was telling her to choke him, and she did. She said, you ever love something so much that you kill it? And then she kind of hugs herself and just like starts squeezing. And she said, that's what happened to me. I don't know about y'all. I've never, ever had that thought or even remotely close in my life. She severed his head a couple of hours after he died. She said at times she did doze off and the rest of his body is in a blue Tupperware container. She said the bags with his remains are scattered around the basement. She said she didn't mean for this to happen. The investigator said he has a family. You killed him. When decapitating him, she said she pulled him to where his head was kind of hanging off the bed. And then due to the blood, she dumped all that into the shower drain. She said there's a lot of blood in that Tupperware container, and she said she was going crazy on the limbs. It looked messed up and she didn't like it. She tells investigators that his organs are in plastic bags. She's asked if she removed all of his organs and she said yes. One of the investigators asked her to show where she severed his arm. So she touches the investigator's elbow area. Second interview, February 28th. It was kind of hard to hear this one. She said the dismemberment process was horrible. She was asked if she cleaned up so she wouldn't get caught. She said she did to the best of her ability. She said there's people upstairs. I'm not going to get away with this. It was a really short video compared to the previous one. She said at one point she went into the kitchen and got glasses from Steven, which is Tara's boyfriend. So on cross, when you were talking to her, did she smile inappropriately? No. Did she say things that were bizarre? He said some of the acts she said she did is not common, but I wouldn't say anything she said was bizarre. Did she say she didn't know what was going on? She said at one point she blacked out. You've been on the force 30 years and a detective for 17, and you've worked with people who use meth. It can cause people to act in unusual ways. He says yes. She would trail off talking to you or mumbling. He said no. Did she say she was coming off a high or a buzz? No. Did she say she was paranoid? And he said only about leaving the residence after the murder and the dismemberment. She said, I think it was the dope. And he said, yes. That interview lasted 6 hours. He said that's an estimate. Now, Scott Holmes was supposed to be there as a witness, but he couldn't come today. So the defense asked for a mistrial. It was denied. The state says they stipulate to whatever he would have testified to. He's in the hospital and will be for several weeks. So that's kind of why he can't be there. So now we move on to the state closings. I'm just going to briefly sum these up. It's very repetitive of all the testimony that we've had. He just points out with the investigation, the DNA, the medical examiner testimony, and her admission, she caused his death. She described his face as turning purple. She said, I still didn't stop. She felt his heartbeat, and that made her pull more. She admits Shad is fighting back. This isn't an accident. It's intentional. The detective asked, did you realize if you kept pulling, he would likely die? And she said she did. The acts after the fact, it's intentional. She didn't get him help. She tried to hide the murder. Everything we are finding is consistent with what Taylor was saying. At times, she led the investigation. It's an intentional act. She had the mental purpose. Doesn't need to be premeditated. We heard motive, her interest in Jeffrey Dahmer. Now she rolls her eyes when he says this. The mutilation of a corpse was the intent to conceal the crime. In her second interview, she states her intent. People in the house. Do I leave the body for mom to find it? The third degree sexual assault. She was the one that admitted to it in the interview. They ask a guilty on all 3 counts. The defense, if you guys could have seen the faces she was making as her defense attorney was doing the closings, she was like, what? It was like the most aware I've seen her as far as acting appropriately. Look, this defense attorney has nothing in his corner. I respect defense attorneys. They have a very hard job. Everybody's entitled to a defense. But man, when you don't have anything to work with, it can be painful to watch. He said, I believe this is a puzzling, confusing, and bizarre set of facts. It's unknown what really happened. There were no eyewitnesses in the basement. Leave your emotion aside and focus on the facts of the case. At the second scene, there were no body parts there, talking about the apartment. Don't rush to judgment. Talk about it. Bless his heart. She told investigators she was effing nuts and the body would rebuild itself. Consider what she said. She said things that didn't make sense. She inappropriately laughs and smiles in these interviews. There's no evidence to suggest the third degree sexual assault. There's a ton, buddy, because she admitted it. And then he brings up the fact that there was no DNA found on that toy. Taylor did searches about Jeffrey Dahmer. I suggest that's a ruse and it's shock value. I ask you discount that and set it aside. So that essentially was his closings. He went on for a while, but it was just sort of your basic, what you could imagine he would say at closings, given what little he had to work with. The state comes back. She told you what she did to Shad. After the guilt phase, as I said, they'll move into the insanity phase with the jury. So if we have a verdict before I leave tomorrow, I'll definitely do a little video update for you, YouTube short. So if you are not on YouTube, go hit subscribe, hit that bell button for notifications. Sometimes if there's breaking news that's not long enough to do an episode on, I'll put it on there. So if you're not subscribed and have notifications, you could miss some important updates and cases. As far as Rex Heuermann, I was looking at doing an episode today, but there's really not a lot. That press conference yesterday, they have a ton of evidence they've seized. There were no remains found in the backyard, and they still don't know for sure if any of the victims were killed inside the home. It's going to be a long investigation. If you look at the amount of evidence after 11 or 12 days, however long they were in that house, there's a lot of trace evidence they're looking for. His next hearing is August 1st. I will be flying back home that day. So I will watch that on the plane and tweet it out. And then maybe when I get home, I'll do an episode if there's enough to go on. But for the most part, I plan to do my big Valo episode up there in Idaho the night of sentencing, mainly because I have such an early flight and then I have kind of a little bit of a drive to get to the airport. So I'm leaving out at 6 a.m. and there's no way I'm going to sleep. So my plan is after sentencing to do an episode on that overnight and have that posted if the Wi-Fi gods are blessing me up there in Idaho. But in the meantime, I am headed out tomorrow to Yellowstone. I'm very, very excited. Thanks to everybody for your tips and your suggestions. I've got things written down. I've got my maps downloaded to be offline, and I'm just ready to go and see something I've wanted to see really since I was a kid. I think Smokey the Bear started my interest in Yellowstone. Anyways, so I'll keep you posted. Again, subscribe, YouTube, hit the bell notification. If there's a verdict, I'll let you know. And I will see you guys soon. Hope you have a really good rest of your evening. Not sure when I'll see you again, but I'll see you when I see you.